Hello, welcome back to the Health Revolution. I'm Allison, and we have a very special guest today, Sean G. Murphy. He's a farm boy from Ohio. He is very curious about the human brain and what makes us tick. So that goes right along with what we're talking about in this podcast. I'm very excited. The reason I wanted Sean to come on this podcast is he is a certified brain coach from the Amen University. And if any of you have studied about Doc Amen, his work is amazing. He has a lot of material out there. Specifically, Sean is trained in the intersection of the brain and nutrition, which goes hand in hand with the mental and physical aspect that we talk about on this podcast. On top of all his studying with the brain coach from Amen University, he's also a neuro-encoding specialist, a mental tough coach, approval to addiction coach. He has a lot going on. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Murphy.
Allison, Sean, it's great. Listen, Allison, I want to say thank you to you and Dr. John. I love what you guys are doing. I love the program that you have to help people understand the connection between their brain and their body. And it's just, the people, I can only imagine the testimonials of what people are saying as they get to work with you and your husband, who's an incredible university and teacher and just helps people at all levels. So I'm just excited to be here. You've got an incredible audience. I've been watching you since we started this connection to come onto your podcast. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. I feel like it's such a pleasure to have you. The studies from Doc Amen have really influenced our studies that we're doing and how we're helping people. So to get connected with one of his brain trainers is such a treat for us. It's such a joy. Plus, we have so much in common. You are a farm boy. You have a ranch there in Arkansas. And John and I are actually building, it's not 30 acres like yours, but we're building a 10-acre area in northern Arizona where we will eventually move and have animals and all sorts of adventures up there and probably retreats. You have retreats on your, yes. Do you call it a ranch or farm?
I call it a ranch. We don't really have the farm. I grew up on a farm, 200 head of Black Angus cattle and chickens and pigs, but here we don't have it yet. So we're working on it. We're going to get some donkeys first. And my bride she helps run the flea market, the farmer's market. And they had a ram there, like a Shetland ram, a little one. I'm just afraid that's going to be coming home here this next Saturday.
Probably. My husband brought a goat home from work one day. And we live in the city, so it happens. It happens. That goat, man. I know mules and donkeys are stubborn, but that goat was something else. Goat yoga was not in the cards for that goat. All right. Well, Sean, I wanted to talk to you, like I said, specifically about the brain training you did from Amen Institute.
Right.
So for those of our listeners that are not familiar with Doc Amen and his institute, can you give us a little overview of what he's all about and the institute?
Absolutely. So Doc Amen, where he found psychology and the understanding and working with the brain was out of the military. Long story, fast forward to today, his institute, the Amen Institute, has been responsible for over 250,000 of these unique brain scans, especially one of the ones with the NFL, to see where the damage was and the injuries were. And what happens is I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I was told you had all the brain cells that you were ever going to have, and everything you did destroyed them. Well, everything you do can destroy them. The challenge is that recent years of research and study allows us to understand that the brain can recover. And what Dr. Amen's Institute shows is when they do these specialty scans of the brain where it shows blood flow and there's these big holes and gaping holes that are in the brain, and the imagery is that through nutrition, through meditation, through conversation, through self-talk, through disciplined actions, we can literally rebuild the hardware and access parts of the brain. There's people who literally have a lobectomy, half of their brain gone, and they're still able to function and perform because the brain's a pretty amazing thing, as you know. And as a life coach, one of the things that you do is help people really start to organize some of the functionalities and disciplines And that really helps them rewire the hardware.
Right. I know when we study about brain health, we really, that should be the most important thing that we do. Our brain controls everything, not just our mental health, but the brain controls every aspect of our body. It tells our body how to function. And so when we're talking about brain training, I mean, what more important training could you get?
Well, you know, Dr. Amen says brains rule the world, and they do. And
For
the thing
now.
is, for now, between you, me, and a fence post, for now, the big thing is that we want fat brains. And what they found is that there's a significant correlation to being overweight and having a skinny brain.
Wow.
So obesity shrinks your brain. And it's funny how you would think that, well, if everything that happens in the body happens in the brain, that's one of the few things that is an exact opposite. So
Why is that?
well, what happens is that the brain loses its capability and capacity because people who are typically overweight aren't eating good nutrition, they're not hydrating. There's all of the things that we want everybody to work on. And so the brain suffers because it's 25% of the calorie consumption, 20 to 25% of everything that goes to the brain. And if it's all junk food, right, you got the blood-brain barrier, you got all of these things. Then add to the fact that, Allison, when somebody gets over 50, their brain stops using glucose as its primary fuel, which is why we walk into rooms and go, the heck am I doing in here?
Never.
It never happens. And so all of this to say is we want to have fat brains. We want to have good stuff. Amen Institute did a study. And this is for all of your audience. This is in general public knowledge, but most aren't aware of it. The simple fact that the brain needs some good oils like omegas, omega-3s, and the deficiency, we should be at a level around 4 to 5 is the indication rating. The people at the Amen Institute, 39 out of 40, were below a 2.
Wow.
So when we want to make good decisions and have good ideas, yes, we always talk about hydration. Most people aren't talking about good quality nutritionals and supplements to help us actually feel better, right? So the system that you put people on is an all-inclusive system. It's about taking care of the whole body, and which is why I'm excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, very exciting. The more we have done our research, Dr. Peterson and I, about the keto diet, which is high fat, very low carb, and we're talking the good fats, the olive oil, avocado oil, the MCT oil. The more we have seen a direct correlation, and our clients continually, even if the weight is slowly coming off, the first benefit they see always is mental clarity. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in the brain on that diet that helps us with that brain fog goes away?
Well, you said it when you were talking about the good fats. And one of the things is that literally the brain is a super highway of electrical connections. And one of the greatest things that is a conductor of electricity is liquid, is water. And literally the brain needs this lubrication to be able to activate and do things that's supposed to do. So the heavy fats, the MCTs, the avocados, the coconut oils, all of those things feed the brain in a way that give it its sense of nutrition because it needs that. The brain by itself is literally this gelatin-like substance. It's not this hard thing, and it needs that fat in order to move, neuroplasticity to grow for electrical connection and conduit. The synapse that turn electrical energy into chemical energy, all of that needs this fuel, and that's why most people will see the biggest thing in that of the going away of the brain fog. The other thing is that they're probably reducing the brain fog because they might be getting into some deeper sleep, some slow wave sleep, and their body's actually beginning to heal itself. So there's all of these things that if we take care of the brain, absolutely. And you mentioned ketones. My son had a severe concussion. Pre-testing scores, where he was at a 98. Post-concussion, went to a 25. Wow. I put him on a massive ketogenic diet and exogenous ketones, and he got back up to a 90 in a time that the doctors went, what did you do? He said,
Yeah,
I let
they
the
don't.
body do what it's supposed to do.
And did you find that the doctors believed you, or were they in disbelief?
Well, they're a little bit proactive in research, and they said, well, we don't have any research. I said, well, if you learn to read, this is Dr. Amen's conversation as well. If you know how to read, the Cleveland Institute has done over 50 studies on the brain and ketones and what they do for the body. So that was the big reason why the ketogenic diet, was started, was back in 1910 for epilepsy.
Yeah, for seizures.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, you're using the word ketones, and I'm familiar with ketones, but can you explain to the listeners what are ketones? What do they do for us, and how can we get more of them?
Excellent. So there's endogenous and exogenous. There's one's inside and one's outside. What ketones are, a signaling molecule. And when you've heard of the ketogenic diet, and people said, oh, I've tried that. Well, what they were doing was,
so many people saying that.
well, they didn't really try it. They failed at it, because had they got to it, they'd have stayed on it. Yes. That's how powerful ketones are in the body. They're produced in the liver. And when the liver is no longer has glucose,
which we're depriving our body of on the keto diet.
On the ketogenic diet, yes. And so we have things that our body goes through this keto normalization, where we have bad breath and we have other parts of us that don't smell so good. But a ketone signaling molecule is something that the body uses to indicate that it can perform at a higher rate. It's different. It's your body running on jet fuel versus car fuel. You perform better, you think faster, you sleep better, your muscles recover faster, recovery's faster, lifting is better, your oxygenation is better. It's just, it does your body better. And then you put the brain on ketones. Well, think about it. If they've done research with babies in the last trimester, their body is running on ketones, which is why the growth happens so fast. Their brain is literally running on ketones, pulling from mom. So all of this to say, everything that when we are at our peak performance, our body's already got a built-in system called endogenous ketones. And if you don't want to go through the ketogenic diet, you can, they call it dirty keto. You can eat healthier, eat a little cleaner. Don't eat the gallon of ice cream. Maybe you lick the spoon somebody else used just to get the flavor. But when you use exogenous ketones, your body can change. You can put your body into a ketogenic state, and some are under an hour, some are under 5 minutes.
Wow. Yeah. I think the more we study, you mentioned the ice cream, but the more we study about the effects of sugar and processed food, I mean, we're not just talking brain health, we're talking our whole system and the effects of sugar, how it increases risk of heart disease, stroke, even cancer. It's such a toxic food that has become so normalized to put in our body.
More addictive than cocaine.
Oh, absolutely. And we give it to children, and it's on every corner, and it's very accessible.
So, and then you talk about, I mean, good sugar, right, was hard to get back in the day, but now processed, and then the liquid stuff that goes into different foods and everything else that comes out of corn. And listen, I'm a farmer. I want people to buy corn, but I don't want them to do that with it, right? So if people just took a little bit of an interest in that, and they also worked on their brain, right? People, the Sudoku craze, I don't know if it's still going on. Maybe it aged myself.
My dad does Sudoku.
Well, it creates neuroplasticity. Now, the challenge is ask dad, can he recognize patterns? Is because if he's beginning to recognize patterns, the brain looks for two things. Will it kill me? Or how fast can I recognize the pattern? And if we're in these habitual states, we're no longer plasticizing mental plasticity with our brain, and we're not creating new neural pathways. It's the new neural pathways that keep us young, that keep the brain young, that say we have to be prepared for more. And that's, again, when they get with a life coach, somebody like you and Dr. John, when you guys are teaching people, you're not teaching them what they know, you're teaching them what they don't know, which causes them to feel a way they never felt and think a way they never thought, which is a recipe for disaster unless they have somebody like you to walk them through the fire. So I'm really excited of what you guys are doing.
Thank you. You mentioned neural pathways. That's a big teaching point that we have here at Peterson Family Coaching, because what the simplest way I can explain neural pathways is like a hiking trail. You start at one place and you end at the other. And there's, when you hike a trail several times over the course of your lifetime, it becomes a very deep groove. And so if we think about that as something in your brain, something that's very common and it's easy to go there.
It is.
And if you're trying, so let's say their thought is, I can't make any friends. And that's just that's a belief that they have in their brain, even though the ending point is painful. That's painful thought, to think I don't have any friends. But it's easier to think that than to develop a new neural pathway, a new belief, a new thought system, and a new and to generate a new feeling. It's very difficult for us to go on that new journey. And are you saying it's more difficult the older we get?
Well, yes, because a couple of things. One, the brain's running on glucose, which it has a massive supply, but it can't use. So, which is why people with MCI, mild cognitive impairment, when they get onto ketones, all of a sudden the fog and they start to think and act and they can do different things. The bigger challenge that you're speaking to is the 80,000 thoughts we have a day. Now, Queen's University out of Canada says we've got about 6,000 thoughts. Well, what they were referencing is 6,000 new thoughts.
Right.
So out of 80,000 thoughts, 60,000 are repetitive. Here's
Correct.
the scary part. 80% of those are not in our favor. And this is happening at the subconscious level.
Right. So 80,000 thoughts a day, 80 to 90% are repetitive, and most of those are negative.
Are not in our favor because of it's the environment we grew up in, right? This is why when you do an intake survey and you say, could you tell me 10 things you don't like about yourself? They go, in a heartbeat. Could you 10 things you love about yourself? Well, I don't know. I graduated summa cum laude at the highest university. They think it has to be a Nobel Peace Prize winning moment to say that was, I guess it was good. I do an example with people. I say, give me a list of 500 things, and I want you to start with, do you know how to brush your teeth with both hands? Have you ever ridden a bike? And we have to stack some good stuff, because all these years of negative input that we say we're not enough. And don't even get me started with the female brain versus the male brain, and then the mom brain versus the female brain. Oh my gosh, this amazing brain. This goes into, you even guys have a term for it. We call it mommy brain. It's the brain literally rewiring itself to not have to be aggressive. I have children now. I need to create the herd that is okay, that is peaceful, and it's sacrificial. And weight is sometimes an identity that it's easy for them to say, this is just who I am. Then they come along with you and Dr. John, and you guys have this conversation with them and say there's more. They don't believe it. They believe it for the hour they're with you. Well, this is happening inside their brain. So we have to upgrade the hardware. How do we upgrade the hardware? We let it know that it's done some darn good things, and we start to reorganize and prioritize the fact that I've done some pretty amazing things. I've talked to people and they've had dinner at the Eiffel Tower. I go, are you kidding me? That's like on my bucket list. Well, I didn't know. I didn't know it was that important. So as you work with people and as you bring people to this new level of education and understanding in their bodies, and they see the success, the world gets better. Then all of a sudden, everything gets better. And this all happens in the brain. If we're not taking care of the brain, I don't care how many push-ups I do. If I have a negative self-worth, I'm going to wind up with 72-inch arms because I think that's what's going to make me lovable. And it's not. We have to work on the brain. So,
yeah. And tell us about those push-ups, for instance, how much your brain has to do with the ability to do those push-ups in the first place.
Well, we think we're working out our arms, when we're really, what we're doing is, because form is function. And so people, if you can do push-ups wrong, you can get hurt. You can get hurt walking wrong. So we have to establish this form. And what happens is that we hire a coach to give us good form, but good form is uncomfortable until we follow the form. And that's the reason we hire a coach. A coach is going to help us put that good form in place. And the brain is literally doing a habitual pattern, because if you do it enough, it becomes habitual, and the brain says, okay, it's not going to kill us, and this is a pattern. Let's go for it. And then we have to upgrade the lungs and everything else to be able to do it longer, and the fluid flow in the blood, and everybody gets prepared. This is why they get that high, right? People who work out get the high, runners get the high. That's dopamine. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you that I've ever run and gotten a high. I'm just not that guy. But doing this with you gives me a high. Yeah. Sharing with your audience gives me a high, because they can see there's a potential that they can wrap their arms around, that they don't have to become some rocket scientist. They've got a coach in you and John, and they've got these people out there that can serve them and give them the form to create the function that builds the results.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about ketones. You also mentioned omega-3s as a benefit. Tell us how omega-3s benefit us, and where do we get omega-3s? I know, is it a fish oil?
Yeah, it's EPA and DHA, and they need to be in a ratio. Now, there's 3s and there's 6s and all of these other ones. 3s are what you want, because 6s are actually a little bit toxic to our body.
Okay.
But people say, I'm going to get all the omegas. No, you don't really want all the omegas. It's kind of like, I don't want all the arsenic. It's natural. It's all natural. It's arsenic. But anyway, so omega-3, they should be in a ratio minimum 600 to 400. EPA and DHA, 600 to 400. And that gives the brain this functionality, the ability to use it, because it's kind of like people saying, well, yeah, I hydrated. How much? Well, I drank some water. How much? And you're really trying to pull it out. Well, I had a glass. That's not enough.
Right.
So omega-3s, Dr. Amen's Institute has it. They've got it on Brain Health. But they've got a good one. It's reasonable. There's probably some great network marketing companies. But when you look at it, look at the label. Because they can say it's from the finest fish oil, krill oil. It could be this, and the whale only sang hallelujah every third Sunday before whatever it is, you got to look at the ratio, 600 to 400. Now, it can be above that. There's one company I know that does some keto drinks, and they have 4,000% vitamin B12. Why would you want that? Because we're wildly deficient in that as well. And that's another brain food that helps feed and helps with cognitive ability. So, yeah, omegas, 600, 400, DEA, EPH, and you'll be in some good shape.
Okay, so for my listeners, do they actually need to be in ketosis or on the keto diet in order to access the ketones and in order to take omega-3s, or will these supplements and things help even if they're not on the keto diet?
So one of the things is, the answer to that is yes, they will help. And if they didn't change a thing in their diet, and they started to use some exogenous ketones, and they started to use some good fish oils, and they started to maybe use some good supplements, but just let's stay with the omegas and the ketones.
Okay.
What will happen is that the body knows this is better, and all of a sudden some new patterns, some new mental neuroplasticity happens, and you start to have a little bit, you're not as tired, so you're not complaining that you're tired. You didn't sleep as bad, so you don't wake up and you go, oh my God, I slept pretty good. One of the things is that when people start to take this, their story changes. If you've ever had a client, I had a client one time, I gave him a little magnet and a far infrared wrap for their elbow. It had hurt them for years. They were a waitress, and I gave it to her and I said, Flo, here you go. And she goes, oh my gosh, 30 years my elbows hurt. Well, because it was her identity, when people came into the restaurant and asked her, hey Flo, how's the elbow? And it was good.
Wow.
She lost her story.
Wow. So just the thought about her elbow being bad kept creating that result for her.
Kept creating the result. And then when she didn't have anything, because that was how she was identified, Flo with the bad elbow, when she said it's great, nobody knew what to say to her next. And she brought back the discomfort. So I say that to say, when I talk to people, whether it's weight loss or incomes or any kind of thing that they're setting on their chart, on their dream board, first question I ask them is an odd question, gets eye rolls. I go, who's going to be jealous when you reach this goal? And they go, what are you talking about? I said, who's going to be jealous? Well, nobody. Everybody wants me to be success. I said, that's a lie, because otherwise you'd be there already. There's an old story that's running. And a lot of times for many people, it's their parents' story. If I make more money than my parents, I will disappoint them. I will be an embarrassment to them. Not that they don't want me to make more money, but I don't want them to be embarrassed that their kids are making 10 times more money than I are. What kind of schleps were they? These are stories that run. And when you start to dive in and you understand, because the first thing I'll ask somebody is, where do you feel that in your body? And the energy as it balls up in the body is a location that usually has an identification of where an old story is. The lungs are grief, the kidneys are one thing, the back, the knees, all of this stuff is old programming. And that's the neuro-encoding part of it. And when we understand where thoughts go and where thoughts trigger emotions in the body, we then can have a dialogue and rewire that particular part of the body that then signals to the brain it's okay for me to create more income, to eat healthier. There's people, imagine you're going to buy all of your greens at the grocery store, and somebody goes, what are you doing in this part of the grocery store? You're right, I'm lost. And they go to the other ones like, why can't I buy lettuce? Why can't I buy collard? What? And this all has to do with what you and John teach about the brain and understanding this is more about a holistic approach than it is about calories.
Yeah.
Calories are important, but it's more about this getting the brain on some good fuel and getting the body.
Yeah, the first month we don't even talk about calories, really. We spend time discovering why they even got here in the first place, what we've been taught about nutrition that might not be true. And then we
people have funny thoughts about nutrition that could not be true. Like they
well, yeah. A few. There's a few out there.
There's some myths out there.
There's a few. And so just trying to work through those and say, how might this not be true, actually? And how is this belief that you've held on to so much as truth actually created this result that you don't want in your life? And really, we have so much control over our results in life, more than we ever give credit to. We think about that it's our situation. It's because my upbringing, my parents, because I had a poor childhood, or because my genetics or something. And what you're saying, and I agree wholeheartedly, is that when we do this work, when you are more mindful of the thoughts, more mindful of your diet, more mindful of how you're using your time, you can create those lasting results that will just amplify your life.
Dr. Joe talks about when we close our eyes and we go into rehearsal and we activate the quantum field. And it's thought that activates the quantum field, which means is the equivalent of us writing on a sticky note, I'm going to create my wellness or my ideal weight. The challenge is that the emotion at the time of turning on the quantum field is what gets built. If there's doubt and fear in writing that ideal weight, oh my God, this will never happen. But that's what I want. They told me to write it down. Wallace D. Wattles says it's not about doing certain things. It's about doing things in a certain way. So the activity that turns on the lights in the quantum field is thought, is thinking. What builds it is the emotion. Yeah. As one of probably 100 people, probably less, on the Institute of the Self-Talk, as a faculty member and founding member of the Self-Talk Institute, everything we say gets recorded in the brain. As you mentioned earlier, that hiking track, what we repeat regularly becomes permanent. Here's a question for you. I don't know my bride's cell phone number because it's number 2 on my phone. Do you know John's cell phone number? Do you know?
I happen to know his. I don't know my children's.
I don't know my son's either. So this is how we deactivate those files that when we were little we had growing up. I could still tell you the number. I grew up on 1324 Taylor Wells Road in Clarendon, Ohio. I can still tell you the home phone number because that's wired in with it. When you did the phone call and you said a collect call from Sean, I'm at the gym, click, and you hang up.
You had to know those skills.
And now we don't. So what else are we losing? And then you mentioned earlier that we'll still be in charge. Our brains will run the word for a while, right? Because of AI and what it's coming. Yeah. So I heard a long time ago, there's going to be 3 occupations: build the machine, talk to the machine, or teach others how to use it. And what you and John are doing is teaching others how to use that machine called their brain and their heart and their kidneys and this functionality called the human being. And I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Right back at you. This has been an amazing conversation. Before we go, Sean, tell my listeners, I ask this to every guest on the podcast, what is your why? And in respect to why you are doing what you do, you've been certified in so many aspects of brain health and training. Why do you keep doing this? You mentioned before you travel around the world, you're a big public speaker. I mean, you just go and go and go. Why do you do that?
Because there was somebody on their knees last night looking for both you and for me. And if we keep quiet, they'll never find us. So my mission statement is to change the way I say things so the things I say change things. And that is an ever-learning, deep learning for me to be able to understand it. My primary mission and goal is to be a better husband and a better father. I ask my bride on a weekly scale, 1 to 10, how is I as a husband? Mason's now 19. I can ask him when he was little, it was real easy. Bring home a treat from Walmart, and I was always got a 10. But now in reality is on a scale of 1 to 10, how is I as a dad? Because I think I'm the freaking rock star. But it's their interpretation. It's their perception. So perception is reality. People have a story. It's a story they keep repeating that they don't want. So people like you and I and John and the people who are in this profession of personal development and helping people undo the story, we've got to be out there so they can hear a new story with their own ears. So that's why I do.
Amazing. I mean, I think you brought a tear to my eye, actually. I love that. I hope that that person does find this podcast and they find it very beneficial, if not life-changing. This work has absolutely changed my life, and I can see the passion for it in your voice and in your eyes. And it's wonderful to bring on someone like you. Thank you so much. If you guys want to hear more about what Sean Murphy has to offer, go to the show notes and we'll have all his links down there. He's very active on Instagram and YouTube. And like I said, maybe someday you'll be lucky enough to join him at his ranch and do a health retreat. That would be amazing. Sean, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Best to you. Thank you for all you do. And here, Allison, I want to say to you, for all of the people that listen and may never click a like or send a note, they want to say thank you, but they might be a little embarrassed to do so. So from me, from their heart, thank you. Thank you for what you do. It makes a difference. It's important. And give John a big hug when he gets home, because without the two of you doing this, having that yin and yang mindset, there's going to be some people who might not hang out long enough to get their fix. And you guys are doing some great jobs in fixing people. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Sean. I know we're going to want you on another time, so we'll stay tuned for that. We'll take care. Bye-bye. I hope you found value in what you heard today. If so, please follow us and go give us that 5-star rating. It really helps us reach more people that need to hear this message. Also, if you're ready to make changes to your health and well-being, go check out our Fat to Fuel program. Our coaching program empowers you to make healthy changes to your life one step at a time. Go to fattofuel.com or click the link in the show notes. We hope to see you there.